Good evening and welcome to another tough talking edition of Sports Wednesday, where we tackle all the sporting issues and the controversies in sport. Most importantly, we know trainees, you all love the Bacchanal, and we're going to try to get into a bit of that today. Today, we're talking cricket. With me, we have former WICB CEO, Mr. Bruce Ananson, also past president of Queen's Park Cricket Club. Good evening, Mr. Ananson. How are you doing?
Good evening. Very well, thanks.
All right, so let's get into it one time. Previously, we had the World Cup, West Indies at the World Cup. We know we had Clive Lloyd going into the World Cup saying that he's expecting a lot from the team, building a team for the future, whatnot. In terms of evaluating the general performance of the West Indies at the World Cup, we got to the quarterfinals as a team for the future. Is that good enough?
I think we got to the quarterfinals fortuitously because we lost to Ireland. You remember, Ireland scored well over 300 runs in 45 overs to beat us. And it is only on a better run rate that we eventually sneaked in. But I think the most disappointing part to me of it was our bowling. The bowling to me was not, lacked consistency, lacked variety. And, it was too predictable, particularly coming down to the last 10 or 15 overs. When South Africa scored that 408, they scored something like about 170 in the last 10 or 12 overs.
Of course, the captain getting 64 of the final 2 overs, but we'll talk a bit more about that later on in terms of his captaincy. The bowling lineup, is there a problem with our bowling lineup? What is the problem?
Well, I think to start with, Roach is certainly not match fit at the moment. Roach is our best quick bowler, but Roach needs a lot of work, and he has not been getting that because of his injuries. And I thought he bowled very, very disappointingly. Jason Holder, for most of the time, he bowled pretty consistently. It's only in that game against South Africa where he had, I think, 15 runs or 20 runs in his first 5 overs, and then he went for 64 in the last 2. But again, Suleiman Ben looked very, very ordinary in most of the games, and I thought he was also a big disappointment in the bowling lineup.
Fast bowling versus spin bowling. Which department do you think we really need some work in?
Well, I think we need work in all the areas there. I mean, we have, in my view, 2 guys in Jason Holder and Carlos Brathwaite, who are very, very talented all-rounders. And if they could make the kind of development that you see among players from other countries, I think we would have 2 very, very good players in the longer term there. I think that our spinners, Permaul, Bishu, Ben, they get a lot of wickets in our regional cricket. And if you look at their stats in overall first-class cricket, it's not great. They get their wickets at 37, 38, and 39 runs per wicket, which for a frontline bowler is just not good enough.
Yeah, but there must be a reason performing at such a high level, especially at an event like the World Cup. I mean, you would think that is when you want to put your greatest on show. You would want to display your best, and there must be a reason why these players are not performing, particularly the bowling department, which it says needs the greatest amount of work. There must be a reason why they're not performing at such a high level. Do we need to do like these other teams and get a sports psychologist in? Well, what is the problem?
Well, a sports psychologist might help, but I believe that, we got to go back to basics. We got to go back to the grassroots, the low level, the under-13, the under-15 cricketers. If you look at the running between the wickets, the West Indies are easily the worst runners between the wickets. We got to start getting the younger guys to learn to run between the wickets. It means they got to practice out in the middle, not in the nets. You got to practice out in the middle with fielders, and you got to try and get the ball, work the ball between the fielders. When you look at New Zealand, you look at Australia, I mean, they do that to perfection. And we just tend to hit the ball very hard and straight to fielders. You don't get runs that way. You got to work the ball in between the gaps in the field. And we're just not doing that. And that's why we face so many dot balls in every innings in T20 and in 50-over cricket.
So it's not just the bowlers, the batsmen as well.
Yeah, we have a problem right through our thing. The fielding also is not up to international standards. If you compare the West Indies fielding to New Zealand, Australia, and India, we're way below all of them in our fielding. And again, it takes work. It takes continuous working on it. And to me, we're just not doing the basics right.
All right, well, we have with us on the phone Mr. Darren Ganga. Good evening, Mr. Ganga.
Yes, good evening, and good evening to the panel.
Hi, Darren.
Yes, hi.
We have Mr. Bruce Ananson here with us as well. All right, are we speaking about the West Indies' recent performance at the World Cup? The quarterfinals in particular, that's where we reached. Do you think that is good enough given the talent that was on the West Indies team?
Well, I would say no. Obviously, expectations for our West Indian team to go as far as the finals. We have to be realistic with the players and the way our team has been performing. And I was sort of pleased with the effort of getting into the quarterfinal. It was not a convincing sort of qualification into the final, but nonetheless, I think being one of the top 8 test-playing nation in the world, you expected the West Indies team to be there in that quarterfinal stage. But having said that, we really lacked the killer instinct. We lacked the ability to be clinical in all departments, and that is why we failed to move forward from the quarterfinal stage.
All right, well, we said given the talent of the players, what about given the talent of the competition or the other teams, the other competitors? Do you think quarterfinals was realistic given when you had teams with like New Zealand, you had South Africa, Australia? Do you think where we reached was realistic enough given the other teams?
Yeah, of course. I think when you look at our team and you look at the sort of form of other teams in the World Cup, I didn't think a lot of people expected us to jump out of the group stage. Having said that, we had a couple of good matches. The game against Pakistan, we won convincingly. But we struggled against the better teams, the teams like India, even New Zealand. In that quarterfinal match, we were sort of humiliated with the bat early up. And when a team sets a big total batting first, it's always going to be an uphill battle for you to chase that sort of score and win, knowing that it is a score that really and truly has been unprecedented in terms of 50-over cricket. But we all know what has happened and what has transpired prior to the World Cup. We knew that we had some players in the Caribbean who, if all things were equal, would have been on our West Indian team and would have added a lot of value to the combination of players that we had. I didn't think that we had a lot of options in terms of players and combinations to do different things against different oppositions. Also, our captain was not as experienced as you would want playing in a World Cup, so that in itself was something of a big hurdle for us to cross. I didn't think he had enough time to really sort of mold his team and to develop proper sound relationships with his players so that he can call upon them at different points in the game. So all these factors were against us, and I think that is what really contributed towards us not going beyond the quarterfinal stage in the World Cup.
Darren, do you think it would be fair to say that our fielding was well below par and Dwayne Bravo and Kieron Pollard would have lifted our fielding considerably?
No doubt about that. I think those two players, they are live wires on the field. They've really pulled off some spectacular catches and done some brilliant performances on the field. And having both of them on the field is definitely going to lift your standard of out cricket. I also thought that our batting was not as consistent as we would want it to be. The top order, yes, Chris Gayle was in the mix of runs, but if he scored, Dwayne Smith failed and vice versa. So there was a lot of reliance on our middle order. Marlon Samuels came good on a couple of occasions. But really and truly, I didn't think that we had a middle order that could have produced runs consistently for us. And even in our bowling, not having a person like Sunil Narine sort of eliminated the potency of our attack. Sunil, as you all know, can be a handful for opposition teams. His variety, his mystery is an asset for any captain, and he can be somebody that can be used, if used wisely, can really control a game and really lead you to victory.
But Darren, to me, the biggest problem with our batting is the running between the wickets. we tend to not run very well between the wickets. We tend to hit the ball to long on and long off very hard, where we can only get singles, where you see a lot of the other teams rolling the ball out so they can effectively run twos. And I think that is an area of our cricket that needs a lot of attention in addition to our fielding if we are going to be more consistent in the limited overs games.
Yeah, I think it's about finding the right balance between an attacking and sort of that middle overs game, where you turn the strike over and you pick off the odd boundaries and you ensure that you have a healthy scoring rate and you develop partnerships and really good running between the wickets. If you look at the New Zealand team and you look at the manner in which they batted, you look at their style and their approach was really nexus on the players that they had. You look at the captain at the top of the innings, McCullum at the top of the innings. His average balls faced in this World Cup was probably about 20 to 25 maximum. But within that 20 to 25, the team got a jump start towards a total that they could have worked with. Likewise, in the West Indies team, I think we needed to have a more consistent approach to our 50 overs game. I didn't think we had enough players to rotate the strike and to capitalize on any sort of quick fire start at the top of the innings. Also, I think we were too aggressive in our approach and not recognizing that there are periods in a 50 over game where we need to throttle back in terms of boundary hitting and just try to maintain a certain amount of scoring per over, and then probably throttle back again and throttle on again in terms of the power play overs later in the innings. So it really, you could not have seen, looking on from the outside, you could not have seen a consistent, calculated approach by our team, whether or not that was a planning issue, whether that was an issue of execution, I can't say. But when you set yourself to winning a World Cup, you want to see a cohesive unit. You want to see a team that is playing together. You want to see a bit of chemistry with the 11 players out in the middle. And we very rarely saw that from our West Indian team.
No, Darren, from everything that you're saying, it's sounding as if you're saying that you didn't see the balance on the team that you would like to see.
Yes, I think looking at the players that we have in the Caribbean, I really think it was not our best West Indian team representing us at the World Cup. I always believe that the best players should be selected, and that is all things being equal, if you are to go on to win a particular title. And then the best players for the particular role that they need to perform within the team is very important. So there's no reason why we should not have selected the right players to play the right sort of roles in a 50 over game. Many a times we pick players based on their reputation, and there is no sort of structure towards the approach collectively. That is what I would like to see more from our West Indian teams. You know, having the coach and the technical team saying directly to certain players, this is the role that you're going to play in this particular tournament. This is what I want you to focus on. This is what you need to consistently deliver for this team to do well. And we have too much of a sameness in terms of our players that is not giving us cutting-edge performances. We need to start molding players into different roles, making sure that these players master these roles and they deliver consistent performances. And I just think, to be fair on the players, if you're not really sort of guided and if you're not told, well, this is this sort of role we would like you to play, and this is the sort of medium to long-term plan that we have for you, then you would not find players developing at a quick rate. And maybe Phil Simmons, in his new term as coach of the West Indies team, needs to really take a bird's eye view of the talent available in the Caribbean, identify the players or the pool of players he would like to play particular roles within the West Indies team and within the different versions of the game as well, and to articulate that clearly to these players so that they can understand what the coach expects from them over a period of time, because that's the only way you're going to get players assessing their performances, assessing themselves, and that's the only way you're going to be able to hold players accountable and maybe the technical team accountable for the performances of our West Indian team.
All right, now, I want to put both you and Bruce in the hot seat for a moment. Now, more so you, Darren, I guess you'll be friends with a lot of these players, but based on the lineup we selected for the tournament, who do you think should not have been at the tournament, and who do you think should have been there?
Well, it's no doubt that that Dwayne Bravo, Kieron Pollard, and Sunil Narine should have featured in our West Indian team at the recent World Cup, because these are guys who would have played a fair amount of 50-over cricket. These are guys who have excelled at different points in time. These are guys who have really earned their reputations playing abroad and at the pinnacle of their careers, so to speak. And you would want to capitalize on that sort of form. We failed to do so for the different reasons, which has been made public. But those are the players that I think could have made a bigger impact on our team. I still feel that we need to really look at the fast bowlers that we've got and really identify fast bowlers that we would like to concentrate on Test cricket, fast bowlers who we think, or medium pacers who we think will feature in our 50-over game and those for T20. Right now, I think we're just selecting based on names. We're not selecting based on any particular plan, and that to me is sort of stunting the growth and development of our bowlers. It is not really giving us that sort of competitive edge as a team.
That sounds like a political answer, you know, Dan. You're still in Telmo who you think should not have been there, you know?
Well, I believe...
I mean, again, you know, that is really difficult for me to answer at this time, because if you look at the three all-rounders that I call, and maybe the two all-rounders is that of Dwayne and Kieron Pollard, you would think that, you know, some of the all-rounders, you may want to replace them with, I didn't think we needed so many spin bowlers. I think Nikita Miller was a replacement, if I'm not mistaken, for Darren Bravo. I probably having one of our all-rounders there. Sunil Narine definitely taking the place of any of the spinners there and featuring for our team. And you know, who knows? Maybe we were a batter too much in a 50-over World Cup. You need to really give players the confidence. We had Lendl Simmons, who was sitting on the bench for quite a while before he got an opportunity. So I think these guys could have probably been selected on the team in place of those players called.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much, Darren. We have to go for a short break. When we come back, we're going to get from Mr. Ananson, and I'm sure he's going to be quite scathing in who he thought should not have been on the West Indies team. We're talking West Indies cricket, a post-mortem of the World Cup still to come, and an update on the England tour of the West Indies that's coming up pretty soon. Welcome back to Sport Wednesday. We're talking West Indies cricket. And Mr. Nansen, before we went to the break, we promised to let them know who you thought should not have been on the West Indies team for the recent World Cup. We got as far as the quarterfinals. Some people think it's good enough. Some people say, no, it's not good enough. Who do you think we really should not have had there?
Well, I thought before we go into who we should not have had there, I thought that the whole draw of the World Cup favored New Zealand and Australia very highly. They were both playing at home. Australia played all their games at home with the exception of the one game against New Zealand, which they played in New Zealand and they lost. New Zealand played all the games at home except for the game they played against Australia in the final. So we were always going to be up, if we came fourth in our group, always going to be up against either New Zealand in New Zealand or Australia in Australia. As it turned out, the two of them were in the final. So to say, you know, we got to the quarters, not very convincingly, but we got to the quarters anyway. But making progress from those quarters was always going to be a difficult task. Insofar as the players that were taken, the only one I would really say I didn't think should have been on the team because he was injured before is Kemar Roach. I think we all know Kemar Roach is a lovely bowler when he's in good rhythm. And when he is in good rhythm, it means he has been working very hard at his bowling. He was injured before the World Cup. He barely recovered in time to the World Cup. And the 2 games that he played, you know, he just had no rhythm, no control, anything at all. And I thought it was a little unfair on him to have selected him for the World Cup. Suleiman Ben, as I said earlier, to me bowled very ordinarily right through. And I thought maybe Nikita Miller could have been given an opportunity or 2 more. Then the question arises, should Nikita Miller have gone ahead of Permaul or Bishu? You know, that's another, maybe the experience of Nikita Miller is what they opted for. But I didn't think that Ben served any useful purpose on the team. And Kemar Roach, apart from those 2, the guy I thought should have been on the team from the beginning was Carlos Brathwaite, and he was not selected in the initial stages. Carlos Brathwaite and Bravo and Pollard, to me, were 3 players I would have liked to see on the team.
All right, well, we have a call. Good evening, caller. Hi, good evening, caller.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
This
Hi.
question is for Mr. Nansen. Bruce, you just mentioned that you would have only made possibly 1 change, although you did make some comments on Mr. Suleiman. Question is, if that is the case, who would you have preferred to have been there? Was this really the best team that was selected? And if I need to take your comments as correct in that you're saying that we should only have made 1 change, then are you saying that all of the players' pools that we have from the West Indies are ordinary and mediocre, because that is the performance that we got?
Well, if you look at the stats of West Indian players, the bowlers, and our frontline bowlers, our frontline batsmen, and our all-rounders, and you compare them to the better teams, their bowlers and their all-rounders, you will see that a lot of our players averaging in the 20s and 30s, these are frontline batsmen we're talking about, and the frontline bowlers are getting their wickets at 35, 37, 39, which just is not good enough. But you got to select from what you have. And apart from the Kemar Roach and Suleiman Ben, I thought that most of the players deserved their place on the team. I did say that I thought Carlos Brathwaite should have been on the team. I also felt that both Bravo and Pollard should have been there. Sunil Narine was out because he opted not to go. But if Sunil Narine was in, then Suleiman Ben would have been out. But, you know, nobody putting their hand up really to say that the selectors could say, well, let's give this youngster a chance because he's really doing well in the first-class cricket. Our first-class cricket is not at the level that we need it to be at for players to move into Test cricket.
But you think they really could have made such a controversial decision after you leave out players like Bravo and Pollard? And yes, it really takes a lot of fortitude to stand up on top of that and say, hey, we leave out these experienced players, and on top of that, we're going to put in these 2 youngsters, because you know what, they may not have the experience at the international level, but that's why they're performing at first-class level. You think people were going to accept that?
No, but I think that, you know, as I said, Bravo and Pollard, in my view, should have been there. They lift the spirit of the team, 1. They lift the whole fielding of the team. When fielding is improved, when Pollard and Bravo take these stunning catches that they always do, you lift the bowler's spirit in 1, and then the bowler suddenly becomes a much better bowler. When we put down 5 and 6 catches in every game, the bowlers get very dispirited. And I think that is what happened to us right through the tournament. We dropped far too many catches.
Speaking of dispirited, imagine how Chris Gade would have felt being on that field in the quarterfinals. The man who went on to break your record was dropped by one of your teammates when he was early on in his innings.
21 or something, or 18 or
some figure like that.
Yeah,
dropped early on, and he's standing on the field watching this and knowing that there is absolutely nothing he apparently could do.
Well, it was on a relatively simple catch at that level of cricket anyway, you know, and I thought that Samuels was just, I don't know if he wasn't paying attention, but certainly that catch should have been taken.
Not be paid. Your job is to stand on the field and take catches. That's what you're doing. That's all you have to do.
But you see it all the time, especially with people like Samuels. Samuels, like, he drifts off when he's on the field, and he's not expecting the ball coming to him. And, you know, when you put down those kind of catches, and a guy goes on and makes 200 and whatever it was, 221,
237.
237, yeah. You know, it is dispiriting to think that they dropped him at 18.
That begs the question, though, did Guptill really take the record from Gale, or did the West Indies hand it to him?
Well, I think Gale, if you look at Gale's innings, when he got the double 100, he also had a chance early in his innings. So, you know, that's cricket. That's how it is.
Unfortunate, very unfortunate. Now, one of the main issues that they had at the World Cup, and raised a lot of questions, was Jason Holder's captaincy. From your perspective, do you think it was good decision, bad decision?
I don't think it was fair to the guy to put him as captain into a World Cup without any experience at all. I thought that was very unfair on him. Sammy and Ramdin and a couple of them tried to help him. But at the end of the day, you know, you are the captain and you got to make the buck stops with you. You would have seen Sammy set in fields, you would have seen Ramdin set in fields. And, you know, at some point in time, Holder, the guy did his best. 23 years old, no experience as a captain. I wouldn't be too harsh on him.
No, some of the phrases, or the words rather, that was used to describe him, Clive Lloyd said, he's a very good cricketing brain and the makings of a very good leader. Yet still, some of his tactical decisions was actually quite, he was maligned, if you want to call it that, for some of his tactical decisions. The question is, though, has he risen through the ranks too quickly, or is it just that he was the best of the worst, for lack of a better phrase? They saw no one else who they thought could actually lead the West Indies. They saw no one else who they thought had that sort of energy towards them, and they decided, well, probably he may be able to do it in the future, so let's give him the chance now.
But I saw no reason why Ramdin should not have been made captain. He's captain of the Test team, he's been captain of the 50-over team, he's been captain of the Trinidad team for the longest while. I still say it was unfair on Jason Holder. And, you know, to expect him to rise above all that with a mediocre team who is not playing well was just asking too much of the poor boy.
We have a call on the line. Hi, good evening, caller.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon.
I'm a visitor. I'm visiting right now from New York. And I just listened to the gentleman who's talking. My question to you, sir, is that you just refer something to Mr. Samuel. Does they do drop tests with normally the cricket players?
Do they do what?
We missed that one, caller. What did you say?
If they does drug tests before they go on the field.
Drug tests. They do drug testing with the players from time to time. They don't do it right before the game in most times. But I don't think that there's an issue with Marlon Samuels with drugs at all. I don't think that's an issue. I think Marlon Samuels over the years has shown that he may suffer a bit with attention deficit. You see it in his batting at times. You see it in his fielding at times. But since he was young, that was happening to him. And I don't think that enough was done by the West Indies Cricket Board to try to help the boy when he was young. I mean, at this age and stage of his life, it can be very difficult for him to change now.
Yeah, but I don't think I should have to. If you are a pilot, for example, I would think that when you're in the cockpit, you know that you're supposed to pay attention to the controls, you pay attention to the monitors, make sure everything, your altitude is fine. And similarly, if you're a cricketer, I don't think I, as a West India cricketing board, or even as a selection committee, need to take into consideration the fact that the player doesn't pay attention on the field, something as simple as that.
No, but attention deficit disorder is an illness. And there are ways and means that the people can be trained to focus and concentrate. They have pilots who suffer with ADD, but they are trained in different ways by psychologists to how to focus on what they're doing. And I'm saying to you that I don't believe Marlon Samuels was given the benefit of that kind of expert thing early in his career.
Quite unfortunate, though, if that is the case.
It is very unfortunate.
Which begs another question. In terms of the support that is offered to the players, the West Indies players, do you think all things are in place to ensure that players get that sort of treatment, whether it be medical treatment, or we mentioned just now the psychologists on the team, which is something I'd love to ask Darren as well?
There is a group of people around the team, doctors, psychologists, and so on, that are available to help them. It might surprise you to know that some of them don't think they need help. And therein lies the problem. If people don't accept that they have a difficulty or a problem with something, then There's nothing anybody could do to help them unless they make up their mind that they're going to seek help.
All right, don't forget you can also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/OurTV4. Also, we're online at gisltd.tt/TV-4. And on Twitter, #SportsWednesday. Feel free to give us a call as well, 675-8747 and 675-8749. All right? I want to switch gears a bit. We have the tour with England coming up soon. First things first, off the bat, no pun intended, England's warm-up matches. A St. Kitts Invitational 11, skittle them out for 59, I believe it was.
Yeah, and they were 55 for 7 in the second innings. They ended at 76 for 7.
Exactly. So
a very weak St. Kitts team, and you know, the tradition seems to have changed over the years. Whenever the West Indies tour, they seem to get, particularly England, we seem to get very weak teams to play our warm-up games against. And I don't know if that was a conscious decision by the West Indies board to give them a game that was really, in effect, meaningless.
That was my next question, because I'm trying to figure out, is it a masterstroke? You give them a team that is absolutely has no sort of spine whatsoever. They demolish the team and instill in them a false sense of confidence. What was the reason behind?
I don't know that would instill in England any false sense of confidence. I mean, they would have recognized that the skill of the players they came up against was just not what they need for a warm-up game. But I don't think England would have been happy with that as a warm-up game at all.
Now, the other argument is that when you give them a team like this to play, what does it do in terms of how it paints the West Indies or cricket in the Caribbean? Because they give them a team that they're easily able to demolish. However, if you were to go to let's say, New Zealand or Australia or any one of these teams, and you play against teams like New South Wales and that sort of stuff, you see the quality of players that they have on display. What do you think that says for us?
In the old days, you know, you had in the 70s, for instance, a West Indies A would be the warm-up game against a touring team. Ghana and Croft came out of a West Indies A team against Pakistan, I think in 74 or 76. And they walked straight into the test team when the frontline bowlers were injured. And they never came out to the team after that. But it was a good quality A team that was put out there to play against Pakistan. And that is what should be happening.
But
sadly, it doesn't always.
And that's the other thing. Clive Lloyd says you're building a team, he's building a tean for the future. This would have been the perfect opportunity, not so to give these young players who probably didn't make the cut for the test side an opportunity to showcase some of their skills, not so?
Sure. I thought it was a missed opportunity by the West Indies. They could have put an A team in there to get some good practice. The last time I think England came or Australia came here, there was a A-team game in the said St. Kitts. And the two opening batsmen was Lendl Simmons and somebody else, put on about 300 runs. One of them got a double 100 and one got 100. You know, that is a meaningful warm-up game for a touring team. And that is what I think should happen.
And the other thing also is when teams like England and Australia travel to other countries to do their tour, they carry a number of supporters with them. I shouldn't say carry, they bring them because the supporters will follow the team. They want to see their team playing on tour and whatnot. Don't you think it's a bit disrespectful to those fans who follow their team?
The fans wouldn't be here now. The fans generally come for the test matches in Barbados and Antigua.
They had almost 100 fans actually from England alone just to see the warm-up match at St. Kitts.
Yeah, well, that is a little unusual because they usually would come in great numbers when they play in Barbados and Antigua. And that's why those test matches are generally always back-to-back.
Particularly, well, I can't speak for the other Caribbean islands, but in Trinidad and Tobago, where test cricket definitely is not what it used to be in terms of the turnout you would have coming to see a game.
Throughout the world, test cricket has waned because of the amount of T20 and 50-over cricket that is being played.
Yeah, so giving them a good side is not an opportunity, though, to be able to get a good number of supporters coming out to actually watch the game. It may not be your supporters, but the stadium is still going to have people in the and that's what you want.
I would think you would have got a much better turnout if it was an A team that had some good young promising players. I think people would have taken the opportunity to go and have a look at the younger players.
All right. Now, with regards to England, former West Indies coach Otis Gibson, He's been appointed as their fast bowling.
Back as their bowling coach, yeah.
As the bowling coach. How do you think that's going to impact in this series? I mean, he was our coach at one point in time. He is from the Caribbean, so he's going to have either the pitches and that sort of stuff. How do you think that's going to impact England?
Well, I mean, England obviously realized that Otis Gibson is an asset to them when they travel to the Caribbean, and that's why they're bringing him. You know, he would probably help them in terms of the knowledge of the facilities and the knowledge of the players. There's no question about that. But whether it would have any significant impact is left to be seen.
But you think they're just using him for this series, or you think it's going to be a permanent fix?
I think he did a good job when he was their bowling coach. And they brought him back on as the bowling coach. And, you know, once he's doing a good job as the bowling coach, I think they keep him on, not just for this tour.
All right, 675-8747, 675-8749. You can also message us on Twitter using this hashtag SportsWednesday. All right? England, the person that Mr. Gibson replaced, which was David Saka, I believe it is, means that England have now totally revamped the entire coaching team coming out of that absolutely humiliating loss in the Ashes series to Australia. Do you think we need to look at something like that, first of all?
I certainly think they need to look at the whole management team around our team at this point in time. Phil Simmons is coming in as a new coach. And I do believe that they should not just reinstate the other members of the coaching staff, but they should be looking at people who could maybe work a little better with Philip Simmons. He should be given an opportunity to say who he would like to work with, you know, which is what they do in a lot of the bigger countries. You see that also a lot in football. When a manager moves from one club to another,
they switch everybody else.
They take 2-3 people with them because they want to work with those people. But I think it's time that we have a change in our management team around the players. And I certainly hope that they will give some younger players an opportunity in this England series. Because as I said before, you have a few of them whose averages are as good as or better than some of the other guys who have been in and out of the team for many, many years.
All right, now let's get a bit into the selection. 20 players have been called up so far, including 4 uncapped players. Before we get into the actual players who were selected, young players or players who you think are of the quality enough that you haven't seen in that list of 20?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, we don't have too many young players who put their hand up, so to speak, in our 4-day tournament. I think Dowrich is a good middle order player. He's also a wicketkeeper. I think the youngster Shai Hope is also a good player. He has only played a few first-class games, and he's already scored 200s, 1 double, and another big 100. You know, he looks like a very promising young player, and I hope he gets an opportunity in the middle order during the England tour.
Well, let's look at the list of names. 20 names: Suleiman Ben, Devendra Bishu, Craig Brathwaite, Darren Bravo, Shivnarine Chanderpaul, Sheldon Cottrell, Shannon Gabriel, Jason Holder, Leon Johnson, Veerasammy Permaul, Dinesh Ramdin, the captain, Kemar Roach, Marlon Samuels, Devon Smith, Jerome Taylor, Jermaine Blackwood, and of course the 4 uncapped players, Shai Hope, Carlos Brathwaite, Shane Dowrich, and Miguel Cummings. Let's first start with the captain, of course, for the team, Dinesh Ramdin, sorry. I don't think there's anybody challenging him really for his spot on the test team.
I think Dinesh has done pretty well over the last couple of years with his wicket-keeping as well as his batting and his captaincy of the team. And I think leaving him as the captain of the team is a good move. Depending on how many frontline batsmen they're going to decide to use, they could possibly bat him at 6. Because the number 6 spot, to me, the 2 openers, Devon Smith and Craig Brathwaite, picked themselves coming out of our 4-day series. Darren Bravo at 3, Marlon Samuels at 4, and Chanderpaul at 5. Then you have the number 6 spot, which you have Blackwood, who has a better test average and he has a first-class average.
Yeah.
He would be one of the leading contenders for the number 6 spot. Or you have the Shai Hope, or you have Dowrich. Alternatively, if they bat Ramdin at 6, and they use the 2 all-rounders, Jason Holder and Carlos Brathwaite, at 7 and 8, and then go in with 2 spinners and a quick. That would mean you would have four quicks, 2 all-rounders, 2 quicks, and then 2 spinners.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to continue going through the squad. We're going to dissect the squad, the 20 that have been selected for the England's upcoming tour of the West Indies. When we come back, it is Sports Wednesday right here on TV4. Welcome back. It is Sports Wednesday right here on TV4. Those numbers to call in 6758-747-6758-749. You can also find us online, facebook.com/our TV4. And we're also at gisltd.tt/TV-4. All right. Bruce, we mentioned before the break just now the 20 players who are going to be actually on the team, who they've selected actually for the training camp, to be a bit more accurate, right? One of the names that we're seeing there, and I guess is raising some questions or some eyebrows, if you want to call it that, is Sheldon Cottrell.
Yeah, Cottrell is, I've seen him bowl some pretty useful spells in some of the 4-day games, but I think much like Shannon Gabriel, well, Cottrell, in the case of Cottrell, is the left arm that they wanted to have a little variety in the quicker bowlers. But he tends to not be able to keep a tight line just like Shannon Gabriel. Shannon Gabriel has a lot of pace, but keeping the batsman, you know, with a tight line and length is where both of them have some problems. But Cottrell has showed some promise, and you know, he's been given a couple opportunities. He's only had 2 test wickets at about 98 runs per wicket. But I believe that Shannon Gabriel has done a little better. He had one particularly good test match. But I think a guy like Miguel Cummins is somebody who I would like to see given an opportunity in the series against England.
And that's one of the 4 on-cap players who've been selected. Yeah. We have a call on the line. Good evening, caller. Hello? Hi, good evening. Hi, good evening, caller.
Good evening, David Furlong here.
Hi, Mr. Furlong. How are you doing?
Okay, then.
Hey, David.
All right. So, Mr. Furlong, we know you're the coach of the Queen's Park Cricket Club, also a former national cricketer as well. And we're talking about the lineup for the England's upcoming tour of the West Indies, and we're looking at some of the players there. Now, being an actual coach involved with Queen's Park Cricket Club, you're going to have a bit more of an intimate idea of who should be on this team, or who you would like to see on the team in terms of young players. We have 4 uncapped players. Is there anyone else you would have liked to see on the team?
There's not much more to choose from than you have here. So hopefully, you know, you have Craig Brathwaite, and then hopefully Bishu comes back into the scene. He has been in the wilderness for a while, so hopefully he could come back into the team. Of course, you'll have Marlon Samuels there, Shivnarine Chandrapal, probably to open with Devon Smith. You know, so I don't see much changes to what they had from before, and there's nothing much more out there to choose from.
Now, this seems to be a recurring theme for the entire night. This is about the 3rd time I've heard there isn't much to choose from. What seems to be the problem? How can we not have... Look how many islands we have in the Caribbean, how many islands form part of the West Indies. Why isn't there enough to choose from?
Well, I think our development program has been bad over the years. Teams have been... The players have been just on the fringe, and you know, we have had players scoring 50s, not making good scores. We have over the years been picking players for the West Indies with an average of 20 and 25, you know, which is not good at all when we compare to the other islands or the other countries.
Yeah, David, which is the point I was making a little earlier. There's, coming out of this 4-day tournament that just finished, you're not really seeing anybody putting up their hand and addressing the selectors in terms of making big runs. You have Narsingh Deonarine, I think, got 200s. But then again, Narsingh has been given many, many opportunities and has not succeeded at test level. Even someone like Devon Smith, I guess they had no choice but to include him because he scored by far the most runs in the 4-day tournament. But there was no other opening batsman putting any sort of pressure at all on him and Craig Brathwaite.
No, and that could be one of the problems too, Bruce, is that the players that are there now are not under any pressure to perform. They keep underperforming, but there's nobody else to take their place. So, you know, we need West Indies board, and even not West Indies board, but probably it has to start at club level and then go on to territorial of building these players, getting them to make big scores. And I think the preparation is what is the whole thing that needs to be looked at. If we prepare properly, then we will do well.
Now, the other thing some people will say, Mr. Furlong, is that who is to blame? The WICB aren't exactly the ones who training the players. That's really the club's responsibility. So the question is, who really is to blame, the clubs or the WICB?
Well, the clubs could only do so much. What finance the clubs have to really, in terms of have a sort of small academy within the club? There are not many clubs. I mean, Queen's Park. We at Queen's Park, we have small academies where we have indoor nets, we have bowling machines where the players could train 12 months of the year. We have training programs for them where our players have to come in at a certain time and spend a certain amount of time on the bowling machines and bowling bowling all the time, you know, so that we have a structured program. But how many clubs could afford to do that, over the region? So that West Indies board has to step in and see how best they can help the clubs. And I say probably spend some more money at the club level. They could probably look at now having a club championship in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Say,
that is...
You have the regional tournament, but look at also the club championship, with the best clubs playing a tournament.
That is a good point you make there, David, because really and truly they may have only about 3 or 4 clubs in Trinidad that really have the kind of facilities that the youngsters need to develop and or the programs to develop those youngsters. Most of the clubs need financial help to get the kind of facilities to develop them. But I like the idea of a West Indies club championship, except the amount of cricket they have. Where do you fit that in? But it is a good idea.
Yes, it is, because that way also you expose more players. More players get exposed there, and then more players go on into the regional teams. Right now, the structure that you have they depend on the selectors of the islands to select 10 players, and then to select another 5 players. We all know, we see it in Leeward Islands. We see that, the friendly picks, so that enough players are not exposed. And when those 15 players, so basically, we have 90 players being exposed, and then, we have over maybe 150 players that could be exposed.
Yeah.
If we play a club championship.
And the other question, the other thing, is it that these clubs have nothing to aspire to, if you want to put it for lack of a better phrase? Because you would think that if I, as a club, know that, all right, if my players were to be selected for the West Indies, this is how I am going to benefit. Or if it is I have the best players, then I could win a competition which will in turn bring more funds into the club. So is it that the clubs have nothing to aspire to right now?
Well, yes, but you touched on a good point there. Maybe what they could look at, like similarly, the IPL, the players that play in the IPL, the West Indies board gets money from it. Then the regional gets from it, and then that filters down to the club. So maybe now that the West Indies board, or maybe whichever board is responsible, should offer clubs incentives for producing regional players. Mm-hmm. And another incentive if the player goes on to the test level. Probably some sort of monetary incentive to give that club a little push that, hey, if you develop a player, we need to develop players first, and, that way, see how that helps.
Yeah, something needs to be done at the club level, because that is where you're going to get your players coming forward. And I think one of the problems you have with clubs now too is we don't have a properly structured semi-pro league or professional league. And therefore, you see players jumping from club to club. Every year, a player is with a different club. They play with 4 and 5 different clubs. Whoever paying them the most money, they go into those clubs. A way has to be found to stop that from happening. But the only way that can happen, as you rightly say, is if there's some kind of incentive program for the clubs in the first place to produce the players, and then the players get the benefit from it. And that would give them the incentive to stay with the club and not to be jumping all over the place.
Yeah, obviously, if you have a semi-pro competition, the players one will be guaranteed their income also. And then, as you rightly said, they are from there, they have a sort of sense of security. They could put more time into the game. And, you know, we still play at a amateur league.
Yeah.
Yes, we have players here, but players work during the day. So that you can't force a player to come to practice. You know, it boils down. You know, it's said that, you know, it's club cricket we play.
Yeah.
So that a player who has to work, you can't force him to come to practice or come to practice at a certain time. He might have work, so that we have to go to, you know, semi-pro.
Correct.
And hit the nail on the head there, Bruce.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Furlong. We appreciate having you with us tonight. All right. Before we wrap up, we have a few minutes again left. There's one name on the team as well that really stands out. Because here it is, we have Clive Lloyd saying, look, we want to build a team for the future. Yet still you have 40-year-old Shivnarine Chanderpaul being selected for the team. Now, when I was looking at his stats today, for some reason, it really didn't click that Shivnarine Chanderpaul was all 40 years old already. It just, I mean, I know he has to be, but you just don't seem to think of it because I guess he's so timeless, I guess, in his contribution to the game. The average age of this squad, even with Shivnarine Chanderpaul, is 27.3 years old. Is that good enough for a team for the future?
Well, I think you have a couple good young players coming in there, Cummins and Dowrich and Carlos Edwards and Shai Hope, all very young players. Again, in the case of Chanderpaul, if we had middle-order batsmen putting up their hand and scoring big hundreds in the regional tournament, then that would put pressure on Chanderpaul to also produce. But Chanderpaul got 100 and score in the 90s in the regional tournament. Not very many middle-order batsmen got that. I mean, you have this boy, Jermaine Blackwood, in there. I think his highest score for the season is about 60. Yet he's in the team. You know, and his average in Test cricket is better than his first-class average.
So is there a criteria to be selected? Is it that we should look at the first class, that should be considered, that should not be considered because it's not the same level as Test? How do they decide who is on our Test team?
But you must use your 4-day tournament as a yardstick to select players. It's pointless having a 4-day regional tournament and then you have players that do well in the 4-day tournament and you don't select them to your West Indies team. But you bring in guys who, as David said, averaging in the 20s and low 30s. And bringing them in and not giving people who have done well an opportunity.
Like I said, picking people based on their name, their reputation, which may not be the
But it's good to see they have these 4 young players that they've brought in. And as I said before, I would love to see a guy like Cummins be given an opportunity in a Test match, as well as Shai Hope.
All right, final question before we go. We have 3 players on this team, this Test squad, with more than 50 Test matches to the name. 8 players, I believe, with more than 20 Test matches. You think that mix between experience and youth is a good enough mix?
Yes, I think that the team that they have here is probably the best you could get, with the exception that you don't have a Sunil Narine in the team. And, you know, that is because Sunil had his problems with his bowling action. He did not play in the 4-day tournament, and therefore he eliminated himself from selection in these teams, in addition to which he's playing in the IPL, and the IPL is clashing with the English tour. But apart from Sunil Narine, I mean, I don't know that there are any other players that have really done anything out of the ordinary in the regional tournament to deserve a place and to push Shiv Chanderpaul out of here at all.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ananson. Bruce Ananson, former CEO of the WICB. This has been Sports Wednesday. I'm your host, Gregory McBurney. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget, you can also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/OurTV4. Enjoy the rest of your night.